What's up, people? There we go. How are we all doing today? We all keeping well, I hope. Wait around for some more people to join, so we get at least a reasonable amount of audience. Ooh, I'll just hit my microphone there. So hopefully my camera will stick out for the vast majority of this. It would be nice if it did. I've spent some time making myself a cool camera overlay, like a proper professional would do. So hopefully we'll get some good use of that today. How loud's my microphone? Maybe it needs to be a bit louder. Try and make sure I don't pick up too much background noise. I've got a fan on here, so doesn't seem to be picking it up. So I think we're all good. I'm not clipping. I think I clipped quite a lot in my last stream, so I want to try and avoid that today. I've got plenty to go over today. There's been a whole bevy of news that's come through, a lot of which I'd rather hadn't done, but you know, that is what it is. What it is. Just make the most of it. Didn't tweet out a link. I'm gonna have to put that on Twitter now so people get involved. Hope everyone's doing well. Everyone who's joined in today. Just wait around, waiting till some more people join in. What the hell is this? Someone's just commented. Someone's bot has replied to me with something that is in French that I don't understand. So I'm gonna have to. Oh, someone's bot who just says streamer is not a job. I mean, I guess it's difficult when you think about it in terms of like labor. Like how you're not. I mean, it's not a traditional job in that kind of sense of a thing, but I guess we'll just block this bot. That was a weird one. Streamer c'est pas un métier, which is a new one. I've never been insulted in French before. I mean, it's definitely more of a job than being a landlord at the very least. But yeah, so I wanted to talk about a bunch of things today. Just gonna wait around until more people have joined in. The life of the small streamer. I think people usually say that the difference between a small streamer and a big streamer is when you stop referring to people in chat as guys or friends or things like that and start referring to them as chat. I think that's usually when small streamer becomes big streamer. Probably should have cleaned up my room a bit before I did this, but I don't really care. covering the budget. I mean, I would cover the budget, but there's nothing really much to go through. There was obviously the fight over the increase in corporation tax that I'd Oh, hey Zoe, it's lovely to see you. But yeah, I would have covered the budget, but I feel like not much to really go over. Like there was the corporation tax increase that I went over a bit on the last stream, which obviously like, Keir Starmer didn't fight, would rejected a rising corporation tax, which was nonsensical. But the rest of it's all just a little bit kind of milquetoast. There's not much really to go over, because there's just some more kind of spending plans. That I mean, yeah, I did get it pretty right with regards to the corporation tax banding. I think what the budget kind of sells to me really is that it's the end of kind of austerity politics, at least for the moment anyway. And there's definitely obviously the risk of it coming back in a post-COVID world when they've got to recoup their budget that they spent for the furlough scheme and things like that. But there's no budget cuts, there's no removal of services that they've gone through here, which would lead me to which is similar to the austerity politics of the Cameron Osborne era. So there's not really much to go over with regards to that, I don't think. I mean, the big kind of story that's kind of come out is the what was some advisory committee saying advising about the nurses' pay, but we'll go over that later. We'd see Tories spend out of a recession. The budget was all giveaway. Even the corporate increase in years to come. Yeah, I mean, like I think it is good to see that even the Conservatives are of the opinion now that you have to spend your way through these things. Like austerity doesn't work, and it's definitely the end. It's definitely the end of that era of kind of British politics. But it may come back later on in a post-COVID world. But I think. To be fair to the guy, I think Rishi Sunak really is kind of the optics expert. He does know which points are good to push for optical reasons, and I think austerity is kind of this kind of poisoned chalice now, in that it's kind of been this bedrock of neoliberal economic policy, especially within the Conservative Party intelligentsia for the last kind of 20 years or so, in response to the Labour spending of that kind of era, plus then Cameron and Osborne then putting that theory into practice, and it's had such an adverse effect on people's lives that it's kind of politically toxic now, which I mean it obviously should be, but I feel like that has kind of received a neoliberal wisdom that if you've got a deficit, then you have to cut spending. It's kind of the end of it's kind of gone. It's not part of the political discourse anymore, which is good. I think COVID was one of those things that has kind of thrown these ideas into sharp focus in a way that really wasn't before, which is I mean encouraging to see that it's encouraging to see the Conservative Party move left on this particular issue, which it kind of represents a kind of sea change in the kind of political landscape, which is good. But I wouldn't want to put like too many bets on that continuing once we're out of the pandemic. But I hope I'll get disproven, which would be kind of nice. Which, speaking of optics, now one of the things that has come out, no worries, it's okay. But speaking of optics, right, one thing that has definitely caught the ire of the British public and of the kind of political commentary is the fact that from an advisory position, like an advisory, let me pull up the whole story. Let me actually bring up the story properly. See, look, I've even got my little new little webcam window, which is pretty good. So, this is the kind of the big story that's kind of taken control of the discourse recently, in that nurses prepare for strikes over 1% NHS pay rise in England. Now the so let me just have a look. It was the Department of Health and Social Care, that's the one who recommended the 1% pay rise to the independent panel that advises the government on NHS salaries. Now, the government spokesperson said that the 1% was a real terms increase. The latest official inflation figure was 0.9%, which is essentially meaning that they're not getting a pay rise, which is essentially means a pay freeze, which is, I mean, kind of a tautology there, but essentially what this means is that despite the fact that throughout the COVID pandemic, the nurses and the NHS staff have been putting their lives essentially on the line to keep the rest of the country safe, and one of the biggest kind of health catastrophes of like the last kind of 100 years, right? Despite all of this, they're not getting any kind of financial remuneration for this, despite the fact that lots of them still can't pay their bills. Lots of them still live in, expense. Whilst the cost of living is going up, and their actual real real pay, like their actual take-home pay adjusted for inflation, hasn't changed in this time. Kind of ridiculous, right? I'm not gonna be the first one nor the last one to say that this is woefully inadequate, considering the situation that we have had over the past year and a bit, right? Now, one thing that has happened is that the union have prepared for a strike. The Nurses Union set up a £35 million fund to prepare for possible strike action over 1% pay rise for NHS workers in England. Now, I'm glad, from a consequentialist standpoint, that this strike action is happening now that lockdown's been going on for a long time and the R rate is down. Because there is definitely a lot of public backlash that would come, that wouldn't engender a lot of sympathy from the public if this had happened however many months down the line whilst the pandemic was still properly raging, right? If the pandemic was still raging and nurses were saying that they were striking, there would be like public uproar, because ever since, the neoliberal Thatcherite policies of the 80s, industrial action has kind of been maligned within public discourse. We're not this kind of unified working class who, across different sectors we will support strike action, because the idea of union action has been so fought against in the kind of post-Thatcherite neoliberal consensus. Sometimes it's not optically useful to do strike action in these circumstances, which is very, very frustrating, because it is the job of the mass media to convince different groups of workers that their interests are not the same. Now, you may have a very, very fleeting personal interest in being able to use the services of which this particular union is striking regarding, right? And this is not nothing. Like, this is a pretty large part of our internal functioning. The NHS is the biggest employer in the country, right? But if there's anyone who could use industrial action for the most amount of leverage, it's the people who are most in need, right? It simply stands to reason. And like, oh, thank you for the follow, easy, good night. Who is most likely to impact the way in which some kind of, employer functions? If a boss refuses to work for a day, nothing literally happens. Literally nothing happens if a boss refuses to work for the day. If the entirety of the workforce, I mean, obviously that wouldn't happen. There'll be targeted strikes in certain areas where it wouldn't have such an impact that people are going to die, right? If these people stop working, then everything runs to a halt. So if the nurses threaten to strike, then the possibility of the government capitulating to the strike demands is actually pretty high, I would give, right? I'd be willing to say that I think the idea that the government might actually give in to their demands is actually reasonably high. The big problem is the public backlash that would come from it, because I think it's been kind of, since the pandemic has started, what have we had? We have had clap for carers, we've had clap for key workers, we've had clap for nurses, all of this kind of stuff. This kind of meaningless, like, gesture this completely meaningless, empty, just this platitude that the Conservative Party have been throwing around, essentially as as to redirect people away from the idea that these people, claps are nice. Like, I get, like, right at the start, there was some kind of element of kind of national unity, right, which is good. Like, I'm not going to disparage the idea of national unity, but the big problem is that it's meant to obfuscate the actual issue here, which is that even though these healthcare workers have been putting their lives, their livelihoods, their mental health on the line to be able to keep this country going through this massive health crisis, and they're not being given any real terms remuneration for all this extra work, the only way in which this could be ignored is if you do what the Conservatives do, and you just say, and you cover up this issue by getting people to clap. Now, what I don't think, I talked about on the last stream a lot about the difference between internal and external claims. I don't think that clap for NHS, clap for carers, clap for key workers, I don't think this is an external claim. I don't think this is a way in which the Conservatives are pulling people around to their worldview. It's an internal claim to make people who voted Conservative not feel bad about the fact that their voting actions have a material impact on the lives of working people in this country, right? Specifically key workers and obviously specifically in this case nurses and NHS workers, right? I think that is what they're actually trying to do. They're trying to keep voters from turning away from their party rather than pull people in. Because if you realise that, the impact of the party of supporting this particular party is that, nurses end up being at the end of their tether, unable to pay their bills, then you're going to be the person who's going to feel the most aggrieved by this, right? So you have to be able to cover this up somehow. And what's the best way of doing something is commemorating it, in creating like a national pride event. That's why we're able to, divert people's attention away from all the bad stuff that our country's done historically. Is if you tie it into this kind of imagined nonsense kind of concept of national unity, rather than the actual material interests of the people in these professions, then people aren't going to take it seriously, or they're going to completely avoid what's actually happening in these instances. Now, what I haven't mentioned, what I was actually having a look into today, is that the reason why we as people on the left have such a disunity of thought with liberals is entirely due to liberals' unwillingness to engage in with issues on a materialist basis, right? I mean, we're all no strangers to historical materialism. We look at things as obviously critical theory, all these kind of things where we talk about the material interests of populations that have driven policy and policy making throughout time, right? That's how we look at things, but we don't look at things in an idealistic perspective, which is strange. And people always think that we're the idealistic ones when we're the materialists in these instances, right? Now, it's difficult to turn people around to thinking about things from a materialist perspective when they've only had this idea of thinking around through, well, as long as people's intentions are idealistically pure, then we get that should engender good outcomes, when we know that it doesn't, in the same way that this clap for carers is idealistic, but it doesn't actually change the material conditions of the people who actually have to work in the nursing sector. And you'd think, right, it's when a country has 20 billion to be able to spend on our military budget, we can't spend the 5 billion that it would take to actually do this 12.5% pay rise that the RCN has actually called for. You'd think that this would be optically easy for the government to do, right? They would just be able to say, yeah, we're just going to instead of giving money to the military, we're going to give money to our nurses, right? Easy as that. I don't know why the Conservative government, who've been pretty good on optics this part, with regards to economic policy at the very least, they've been pretty good at making things optically good for themselves. They won't just do this one thing that's been part of the national discourse for the past year. It makes no sense to me. And then that's when it clicked, is that it's all about idealisms at this point. And that, it's I don't know why they wouldn't compromise their idealistic positions to be able to, first of all, placate the unions in this particular issue. B, why they wouldn't want to, at least, try and win people over on this issue optically by giving the nurses the pay rises that, I believe, and I think quite a lot of the country believe that they actually deserve, right? I mean, I do have one theory. It's possible that they knew that by implementing these policies, it would then prompt people in the nursing sector to then strike, and then they can use that for anti-union sentiment, but that feels a little bit tinfoil hatty. At any rate, massive failure on the part of the government, both in real terms and like in actual, material terms and optical terms. So it seems completely pointless for them to continue on this particular issue without, capitulating to the demands of the RCN in this particular case. And the thing is this actually comes across to a load of other public sector staff. Like, it's difficult to try and say that we're only going to give one particular part of the public sector a pay rise and then keep everyone else's pay frozen. But I think it's kind of this it's a unique particular circumstance that we have here during a pandemic where, I think, firefighters and police officers and teachers haven't done quite as much as the NHS staff have done during this period. I mean, they have had, particular issues they've had to deal with, but I mean, obviously I'm not going to care about police officers, but I don't see why they wouldn't just do this. I mean, there's been a long-standing battle between the Conservative government and teachers' unions for quite a while, of which the public inexplicably seem to be coming down on the government side on this particular issue, just saying that teachers are being selfish not to want to, put their own lives on the line just to take people's scrotty little infants away from them for a certain amount of time. I should mediate my language somewhat. I understand. If any parents are watching this, I understand that it's really quite challenging having kids running around your house with having no respite because the schools are closed. But if you don't think that children gathering in enclosed spaces isn't a really large vector for coronavirus transmission, you're delusional. You're completely delusional. Opening schools is, until the R rate is significantly down, is completely pointless. And where are we at now? We're at March. The school year is ending in 3 months. What's the point in having 3 months of extra school? Just have summer and then let them come back, and when we're actually going to be passed through the pandemic and we're all going to be vaccinated, at that end point, just that's what I would recommend doing with regards to the schooling issue. Don't bring back teachers specifically because you want to have a fight with the unions to turn the public against union sentiment, which is, to be clear, worked perfectly. And that people are, their point of view of unions, their view of unions has been soured by this fight between the teachers' unions and the government over this particular issue. I get it. I understand that it's frustrating for you, that you really want to get the kids out of your house. But why should you expect people to put their lives online during a pandemic for that particular reason, when it is safer for both them and you for your kids to learn remotely? It's an unfortunate situation, and I think the unfortunate situation of you having to do your job as a parent is not quite as important as forcing teachers to have to go to work in dangerous conditions, right? What have the government even said about this? Health Minister and former nurse Nadine Dorries said she was pleasantly surprised that any rise had been proposed. Wow, take the scraps, proles! With the government set to borrow hundreds of billions of pounds this year to support people and businesses through the pandemic. She told BBC's Radio 4 Today programme that nurses do their job because they love their job, adding that we totally appreciate their efforts over the past year. I think you'll find most people do their jobs because they don't want to be fucking homeless. Who could have thought that? That's the worst. That's the most infuriating Conservative talking point for me, is this idea that everyone just does a job, but as a vocation, right? As if we're all not just working our fingers to the bone for any other reason other than the fact that we actually need to put food on our plates. Jesus. At least, wow! Look at this. What have we got here? We have Keir Starmer coming down on the side of the working class. What is this? What is this wild thing that has befallen me? Labour leader says NHS staff and other public sector pay workers need to be properly rewarded. The government's promise to reward NHS workers for their efforts during the pandemic now lie in tatters. I mean, that's good. That is at least a positive that we've got from actual Labour actually deciding to be in opposition for once, which is nice. Nice to see that Labour have decided to actually be in opposition, which they have so far deigned to not bother to do, which has been very frustrating from the point of view of a Labour supporter. Yeah. Speaking of the Labour Party, there has been another story regarding the Labour Party that has come to light this week. And that is that Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, Angela Rayner, has caused an uproar by the heinous crime of buying Airpods. Now, these were bought on expenses. Now, if cast our minds way back to the expensive scandal, what were the kind of things that were getting claimed on expenses that there was a massive furore over? There was a moat, there was porn, there was absolute nonsense and second homes and all that kind of malarkey. Abhorrent, right? Not going to defend that. Now, Labour's deputy leader Angela Rayner claimed a pair of personalised Apple AirPods on expensive, the Sun can reveal. Now, AirPods can be personalised for free, so let's just ignore that for the moment. That's not a difference in price. Now, these are AirPods Pro, so what I'm also not going to defend is anyone buying anything from Apple. Apple are a garbage company for garbage people who create garbage products, and if you buy them, you're an idiot. Like, hot take time. Gonna do the Vosh thing, hot take. Apple products are rubbish. Buy Android, buy Windows. Don't give your money to Apple, the tax-dodging bastards, right? It would have been fine if they weren't personalised, right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just another piece of ammunition that it doesn't actually convey anything with regard to this story, but they want to include it anyway, just because it's going to rile people up. Now, so if we look, new stats show the MP charged taxpayers £250 for their headphones on top of more than £2,000 for Apple Kit at the start of the pandemic. So, now, MPs were allowed to spend an extra £10,000 to kit out their home offices for themselves and their staff as COVID crisis took hold. So this is why this was added to the expenses budget rather than paid for out of her own pocket, because it was on their expensive form. It was claimed as part of office supplies for her home office during the pandemic, which is, as far as I'm concerned, kind of reasonable. You could make an argument that if it's going to be on the public purse, maybe it shouldn't be like top of the range, but I mean, we'll cover it. It'll get covered. Don't worry. And then obviously Labour MP claimed £131 for an iPad pen. Nice to see the Sun is actually engaging at least some amount of reasonable both sides on this issue, and they're saying that they have another Labour Party member, Rosanna Allen Khan, who I think is pretty based. I think she's pretty good. Has taken that £10,000 and using it to spend on laptops to hand out to schools, which is good. John O'Connell of the Taxpayers Alliance said, "No doubt all this spending will be within the rules." Funny you should mention that. Very, very funny that you should mention that this would be said as in the rules, and that is what the spokesperson has said has been submitted in line with the rules. Now, let's have a look here at Angela's actual expenses. Expense claimed here. Office costs, some amount of it is obviously rent, and then there is some staff that are actually paying like their staff as well. And then there's these things here, which is some £600 for Apple equipment, £1,400 for laptops, and then £1,200 for stationery supplies. So this is all our office costs for like actual office equipment, which comes up to £4,500, that or thereabout. Okay, now, what do you think the limit for MPs' expenses on office supplies was before the £10,000 increase? Anyone want to hazard a guess at how much the actual allowance was before they got given like the extra 10k because of the pandemic? I'll tell you. It was £26,000, right? So this increases to £36,000 with that additional 10k. So, even before the 10k increase, this was still within what you're supposed to be, how much you're supposed to be able to have to be able to, kit out your office during the pandemic, because they're all working from home. And it's not like Angela Rayner is some kind of millionaire Jacob Rees-Mogg style figure who can just pay for anything out of their purse, because to his credit, despite even though he's a millionaire, Jacob Rees-Mogg has not actually claimed anything on expenses, because it has all come out of his pocket. The reason why MPs expenses exist is specifically to level the playing field between poor and rich MPs. Not that you're likely to be as poor when you're an MP, although you've not been an MP for that long, only 6 years or so. Is specifically for the reason that sometimes these costs, which are going to go specifically towards actually performing your duties as an employee of the state, that you be able to actually have, the facilities with which to do that. And this is what £4,500 is less than a fifth of the original budget before the 10k increase, plus some rent on top of it as well. This is such a nothing burger. It's completely unremarkable, to the point at which you'd have to wonder, why at all? Why would the Sun be reporting on it? Why would they be reporting on that when they didn't report on Graham Brady, MP for Altrincham and Sale West, who has spent very, very similar amounts on money to Apple and money for software applications, a purchase of an iPad for parliamentary use, and other office equipment, since the 2019 election. It's very, very funny how that they went after the Labour MP but didn't go after the Conservative MP. That's for later on. I wonder if it's possible that they were trying specifically to do this to attack Labour specifically. Well, first of all, that's true. They do only care about rage peddlers. They do only care about generating clicks, generating anger, and manufactured outrage, right? But they want to specifically do this to attack the Labour Party as an entity, to obfuscate the issue of the fact that there's been billions of pounds of public money that has been essentially been taken from the Conservative Party, from the taxpayers' purse, into the hands of their billionaire mates in the form of contracts for the pandemic, right? This can be the only reason that I can think that they've done this, completely obfuscate this issue. Because at the end of the day, a £249 pair of headphones that, sure, maybe they could have been a little bit cheaper, and she definitely shouldn't have bought them from Apple because they're a garbage company for garbage people. Maybe that's a fly in the ointment compared to billions of pounds of taxpayers' money that's essentially been taken through larceny by Conservatives and stuffed into the pockets of their billionaire mates, right? Like, what other possible reason could there be for commenting on this issue, other than just to generate general clickbait to get people angry about the Labour Party miscellaneously? It can't be for any other reason than to divert interest away from the fact that billions of pounds of taxpayers' money has been given to Conservative friends and donors, specifically donors. So essentially, factors of 10 more than the amount that they donated as well. So it's not even like equal remuneration for the money that they gave. It's just a ridiculous level of what's the word I'm thinking? I'm always in the middle of a sentence. I always forget words, and it always happens while I'm streaming. I can't think of the word I'm supposed to be saying here, but I'm just going to say it's ridiculous. Essentially they were able to give this money to their friends without any kind of pushback from the Sun and people like that. Yeah, they're going to comment on a Labour MP who, for all of her faults that she's had since she's been deputy leader, like, she's been better at holding the government to account that Keir Starmer has for a considerable amount of the time that she's been deputy leader, and I'm going to praise her for the work that she's done with that. And she's not just some QC like Starmer is. She's not just some posh boy QC who's been punishing black people in his role in the judicial system. She grew up as a working class mother who came up through the unions to become a member of the Labour Party, and the Labour Party kind of the Labour Party top brass, right? She's not one of the corporate Labour Party members, and despite the fact that a lot of people on the left try and paint her as such, which I think is kind of unfair. Like, I think she's not been perfect in her time as deputy leader, but she's certainly better than Starmer, and I think she definitely still has working class ideals, right? So I'm not going to criticise her like some people on the left have. Which brings me to why I keep seeing this Angela Rayner story in leftist Facebook groups. What do you think you stand to gain from signal boosting this right wing journalism when you're continuing to fuel this narrative that all politicians are the same? No, they demonstrably are not the same. The Conservatives are absolutely worse than the Labour Party, both on expenses during the expenses scandal as well. Let's be clear: the people with all the worst expenses were all Conservative MPs. This is also the same as what other MPs are doing. It's within the rules, and this kind of anti-Labour ire that the Sun are clearly trying to engender here is not. How is this going to lead to pragmatic outcomes that favour leftist perspectives? Right? What do you think this is going to achieve, other than just make people completely disengage from the difference between left and right politics in this, more left and right politicians specifically, because at the end of the day, like, whilst there is a certain amount of politics that is, obviously there's a lot of grassroots politics, especially on the left, but the vast majority of politics is done through the vector of the political discourse that happens through actual politicians, right? So by denigrating people who are generally on our side, and not just like on our side as in opposed to the Tories, on our side on actual economic issues, like she's clearly just some kind of sockdem and like a traditional kind of pre-New Labour but kind of post-Thatcherite social democrat Labour member who's clearly at least somewhat allied with us on quite a lot of issues, and she's not a socialist, but I'll take that. And her being a union, like, having come up through the unions, means she's clearly going to be beholden to union interests. And as I talked about on the last stream, because parliamentary politics is kind of so fucked at this point, and I don't think we're getting a foot in for leftist ideals through that avenue at all, having people in Parliament who are beholden to union values, considering that I'm of the opinion that unions are our best mode with which that we can agitate for working class solidarity. Hence why the nurses were striking and they were taking industrial action through the unions. It's clear that union action is where we're going to get our actual political change from. Why would we specifically attack someone who is demonstrably beholden to union values? It makes no sense for us to do that. So why we are continuing sharing this narrative when we should be concentrating on the real issue, which is Conservative boys club members essentially taking our tax money and distributing it out amongst their mates with basically impunity. There's only been like a handful of people who've like outwardly criticised them probably people in my leftist echo chamber on Twitter. I see a lot of the time, but when you actually look at the actual political discourse, this doesn't happen. When has Starmer ever criticised the Conservative Party for doing this during actual the parliamentary process? He hasn't. He's not done it to anywhere near the extent that he should be doing, because this is absolutely scandalous. Yet here we are fucking talking. They are fretting over someone buying headphones on expenses. Honestly, it's infuriating. So, if anything I would come out of this is leave Angela alone. Maybe I'm simping. Maybe I'm just a big simp for Angela Rayner. I genuinely think that she, despite the fact that she is imperfect, I think she does good work. And A, allowing people to delegitimise her through this particular issue is bad. And B, turning people's ire away from the Conservative Party during this, what could be like an important fulcrum in the political direction that this country goes in a post-pandemic world. We have to maximize our ability to be able to agitate for a new kind of post-neoliberal politics once the pandemic is over. We cannot go back to the normality of austerity politics after this, and without being able to form at least some kind of alliance with social democrats on these issues, that's never going to happen. So, yep, my main point, leave Angela alone. She really didn't do too much wrong on this particular topic. Again, it's not, It's not brilliant. It's not optically great, but it's fine. Like, doing critical analysis what makes us better. That is true. We are critical, and we are critical, and that is a really important point. But I think we should be criticizing people for the right things, and the things that are going to pragmatically lead us to the best outcomes. And especially when this particular issue was within the rules, she's not the worst. She's not like the worst person on this particular issue, and it's completely secondary to like the main thrust of our "where's taxpayers' money going" narrative. Like, it doesn't help our particular movement to focus on this issue when there are far bigger issues. And I wonder how many people from the Taxpayers Alliance attack the government for their handling of COVID contracts. I'm gonna bet it's not very many, because it's a pretty conservative group. Because essentially the Taxpayers Alliance is just some kind of neoliberal framework of like laissez-faire, anti-government spending, austerity politics, right? Far left sees the centre left as closet Tories, and the centre sees the far left as unrealistic loonies. It's frustrating because, I mean, I'm not going to say that in a post-Thatcherite world, the centre left is where it used to be, right? In public discourse, the centre left is just liberalism at this point. Like, even social democrats are seen as being the far left in this particular discourse. But the problem is the actual far left have taken this discourse, and it's been poisoned so hard that they view social democrats as being liberal, or being like capital L liberals, right? They confuse these people when, social democrats genuinely actually, they campaign for social change. They campaign for the same things that we do at this point, such as union membership and collective bargaining, and larger state apparatus with which that we can, influence unfair markets and, inelastic markets specifically, and nationalisation of key industries like transportation and utilities. That these are things that we all agree on, right? We just disagree on capitalism as a concept. Now, I understand that sentence might seem ridiculous in that having such a large disagreement, such as the efficacy of capitalism, does not mean that we are not allies in the fight against neoliberalism. Sure, somewhere down the line, we're going to have to break away from social democrats and say, look, I understand that we got these things because of each other, but you do realise that the things that you fight for aren't because of capitalism that you support. They are specifically antidotes to the bad things about capitalism that you think that you fixed, which could easily be fixed by just not having capitalism in the first place, right? Like, you don't need unions to fight for better remuneration between the working class and the bourgeoisie if there was no bourgeoisie to begin with, right? That's where we differ. Like, you saw Rokanna on the Bad Faith podcast saying that he's not a socialist because he's not a socialist because he believes that there needs to be a strong private sector, whatever. But I think, clearly he needs to be educated on market socialism, because if he believes that socialism is just when the government does stuff. Is Labour essentially two parties banded together? Well, it's always been a kind of big tent party. I hate that term, but essentially it always has been like a kind of soft alliance between liberals, social democrats, and socialists, right? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, for a very long time, like since the 80s, they have just been a social democratic party, right? They've not been an explicitly socialist party, so much so that when Tony Blair came into effect and got rid of Clause 4, which was a very specific socialist part of like the kind of party structure, and change Labour Party to New Labour, which is essentially changing it from like to an actual social democratic party to just a liberal party, right? They were still socialists and social democrats within the party. It was just like the main thrust of Labour Party policy moved liberal rather than social democrat, right? So it's always been this kind of this soft alliance between people of different like anti-Tory, like anti-right-wing sentiment. And the problem is this all came to a head when we realised collectively as the Labour Party actual electorate, rather than the actual MPs people part of the party machinations, like members of the councils and things like that. as the actual lecturer realised that, liberal and neoliberal economic policies aren't good for the working class, aren't giving us the actual material conditions that we need to properly get ahead in society and to change society for the better. There was this kind of long-term schism in the party between people who, still clung to liberal politics and people who had moved past that, and which is why when Corbyn was elected as Labour leader, with a massive majority, which showed that the vast majority of the Labour electorate were for, what in kind of Jeremy Corbyn's manifesto was entirely social democratic policy. There was like the forced selling of stocks and shares to employees of a company, which was a socialist policy. That's not a redistributive policy from a taxation point of view. That is a move to worker ownership, right? As soon as you force members of that business to give some amount of ownership to the workers, that is it's not socialism, but it is a socialist policy, and that is a policy that is trying to get a move towards socialism away from like the capitalist mode of production, whereas a social democratic policy is more of just you tax and then you spend, right, and then you use that to redistribute, or you have unions that mediate between workers and owners, rather than a move to change who the owner is, which is what the stocks and shares policy that was in the Labour manifesto, the Corbyn manifesto specifically. That's why that one was more socialist than social democratic. Like, again, not to say this is socialism, because what is and isn't socialism is very, very kind of murky to try and get into. But the vast majority, I digress anyway, the vast majority of the Corbyn manifesto was just social democratic, and the fact that it got such a major backlash from the kind of the liberal amount of the Labour Party shows that there is this massive schism between people who are essentially just centrists, right? Like, they're not even, if you're not even a social democrat, you're just a liberal, then you're a centrist. Like, I hate to say it, and that's why we have this big gap in political opinion between people on the right and the left of the Labour Party at this point, and why this Corbyn anti-Corbyn kind of war internal fight happened within the Labour Party. Although I think it's really important that we as socialists within the Labour Party move on from Corbyn. I think I touched on this previously, where it gives people far too much ammunition because Corbyn himself has so much baggage, and it's kind of turned socialism into a personality cult when it shouldn't be. But anyway, I've kind of got off the kind of main points here, but in general, it is important, right? It's important to be critical of the people that even the people that we support and that we like and we cherish. We need to be critical of them, like critical of your friends when they do something bad, because that's what good friends do, right? If someone did something bad and they didn't realize you didn't tell them, they wouldn't learn. And I think we have to do that with our political allies as well. But castigating someone like Angela Rayner for something so fucking innocuous, which specifically continues feeding into the narrative that, Conservatives putting billions into the pockets of their mates and packing the House of Lords with their peers and all that kind of malarkey, right? That does nothing. It doesn't do anything pragmatically, and it doesn't do anything optically. All it does is just, push people away from left politics, because there's a kind of prevailing narrative amongst people that I speak to, like non-politically engaged people, that politicians are just all the same. And that's just not true. It isn't true that politicians are all the same. Like, it's like, I've talked about this on the last stream, that vast majority of Conservatives are ideologues, right? But not even like proper ideologues, and that they believe an ideological narrative that they have a personal investment in. But they're an ideologue in such that, for two reasons. First of all, is that they follow Thatcherism like a religion, right? They dogmatically follow Thatcherism like, in so much as though they just have this idea that it's correct because it's been sold to them by their contemporaries within the Conservative Party. And that's part of a conservative movement, is this kind of dogmatic, beholden to that. They're dogmatically beholden to Thatcherism as a concept. And the second part is they're ideologically married to whatever gets them the most money, right? And, If you have economic policies that benefit big businesses, who's going to be the person who donates to your political campaign? It's going to be big businesses. What do you do when then you need to give out COVID contracts? Well, you're going to give it to the people who are going to be most likely to donate to you, and that gets you richer. That's why they're ideologues. Whereas Keir Starmer, he's not an ideologue. He's a political windsock. All he does is blow in the direction in which he thinks is going to, be the best, thing, from with regards to public perception at that time. Now, not to say that trying to do things which is best to maintain your public perception is good, because it definitely is. You definitely should be trying to, as hard as you can, to make the public perception of yourself better. But only having that as the single metric for your political platform is bad, because it means you're not doing things for what's correct, you're just doing things for what's popular. And those are two different things. Like, I'm a fan of democracy, but I'm not a fan of the democratic mandate. It does not necessitate being correct, right? A democratic mandate is a good position to take for which policies that you enact, but not for which policies are good or which aren't. You have to actually have a conversation about the efficacy of, the material impacts and the consequences of these policies to actually discern whether or not they're the correct policies or not in these cases, right? So that's what Keir Starmer is. He doesn't have an ideology. All he does is just point in the direction he thinks the political winds are blowing. Whereas I think Angela Rayner probably is kind of ideologically motivated in the same way we are. It's just we kind of differ with our responses to capitalism. So, yeah, concentrate. Again, pick your fights properly. Think about the actual outcomes of what you're doing, and use that to make people's. And use that to try and divert people's attention towards the things that actually matter. Because in the grand scheme of things, this AirPod story, completely pointless. Does not matter. He feels fake, which turns people off. I agree, actually. Yeah, I think that's an issue. Is that not only is he just like he's not like an everyman. Like, he's kind of posh and kind of like not someone you'd want to go to the pub with, which unfortunately is how we have to choose our political candidates nowadays. Like, he doesn't have any. He's not a good orator. He doesn't engage with people at all. And that's not going to create. It's not. First of all, it's not going to bring people over. But it's also not going to bring people in who are politically unmotivated, right? Which is what Corbyn did very well, actually. Like, I've been a pretty long-term critic of Jeremy Corbyn's, kind of his approach to campaigning. But the fact that he brought in people from outside the regular political landscape, including a lot of young people, is really, really good. But it has to be a happy medium between doing that from an ideological perspective and being optically pragmatic in the way that we actually create a movement that's only gonna appeal to people who are already in the socialist bubble, right? Interesting, people who don't have strong opinions or would call themselves pragmatists. Like, that's frustrating. I have very strong opinions, and I wouldn't be a political streamer on Twitch if I didn't have strong opinions. But like, you have to have a strong opinion to understand what is pragmatically relevant or not. Well, that's true. Yeah, he doesn't. Clearly doesn't fight for anything. He when's the last time he actually advocated for some kind of end goal? Like, remember his speech that he gave where he didn't actually have any concrete ideas. He just said that we need to create a new normal, blah 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 blah. Which didn't, that's not going to empower. That's not going to empower anyone. It's not going to bring people over. It's not going to create some kind of sense of unity between people. How's that going to draw anybody in? It was completely pointless. He's not an orator in any kind of sense of the word. And Corbyn specifically had a specific vision that people, especially young people, could identify with. I mean, I've seen people like anti-populists on Twitter, and they frustrate me to no end. Like, yes, the idea of things popular being bad. Yeah, brilliant. Revolting, because there's definitely bad populism. Like, right populism is essentially just fascism, right? It's just like a euphemism for fascism. Yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is. But But yeah, and it's frustrating because like Starmer's never going to win anyone over, considering that he's just like a bit of a wet wipe of a politician. Doesn't stand for anything. Doesn't mean anything. Doesn't make. There's nothing that Starmer does that would make you like him, which is which is never going to win anyone over. Now there is one politician. There is one politician who has been able to market the everyman aesthetic to win people over with that kind of regard in a kind of right populist angle. And that man is, Lefty's favourite and the BBC's favourite, Nigel Farage, who has announced that he is quitting politics again for the 4th time. He is standing down as a UK party leader. So he's quitting as the UK Reform leader, having quitted as UKIP leader twice and the Brexit party leader once. And then there's the UK. Then there's the Reform UK party, which essentially is just the Brexit party, but with a different branding now that Brexit's happened. Right now, this is not to say that he's leaving the political sphere. Wish he could quit playing Minecraft. True. Shouldn't say that while I'm streaming on Twitch. But anyway, he has not quit politics in general, just party politics specifically. I mean, to be fair, party politics hasn't gone particularly well for him, considering he stood for election. Considering he stood for election in the general and has lost 7 times. How successful! But he's just quitting specifically party politics. He'll still be a pundit. He'll still be giving his misinformed opinions on garbage and spouting anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, and completely being unchallenged on any of these issues. And he's also still going to be the main stakeholder in the Brexit party in accounts. He's still going to be making money off politics. He's not going to be the face of the party. It was changed to, what's the person called now? I swear it said in this article. Oh, Richard Tice, so property developer. I guess these two absolute men of the people, former investment broker and property developer, clearly paragons of the working class. I think he's still is he still an LBC? No, he left last year. Thank fuck. So, he's quit from being the Reform Party leader. Now, what is the legacy of Nigel Farage? That's an interesting question. That's an interesting conversation to have. What is his actual legacy? And what he's done over his course of his, foray into the party political arena. Now, the first thing we have to talk about is obviously Brexit. Because this is the singular thing that I think he's actually succeeded on, he intended, which, to his actual credit, he's never faulted this, because he was part of the referendum party during the 90s and early 2000s, and then they're part of UKIP, and their single party policy, right, was getting the UK to leave the European Union, and he succeeded. That is the singular thing that he's succeeded at. He's never won an election for an actual parliamentary seat. He's never been an MP because he keeps losing, right? But his continual push to divide the Conservative Party on European issues has got to the point where he got what he wanted. The UK has left the European Union, and the reason why he's quitting politics now, he said, is because in a post-Brexit world, now the deal's been ratified and been sent off as of December last year, or whatever it was, he feels like his job in party politics is done now. He's got what he wanted. And that's all. You know what else that he got that he wanted? Lots of money. Where did that money come from? Well, apart from a lot of money that he got from donations from very rich people to get Brexit passed. Wonder why that might have been. But also a lot of money from the European Parliament. Funny that someone who hates Europe so much is so happy to be employed by them as a member of the EU Parliament. Very funny that. Is he the political equivalent of Alan Partridge? Oh my god, that reminds me of the best image. Let me find it. Literally, you could not make it up. You could not make it up. Clearly, there you go. Look at man of the working. Let me find it. There we go. We couldn't make it up there. Man of the working class, very clearly. with, you know, so working class he can afford to pay for his own flotilla, for his own political party and his own political movement. Oh, the biggest grift of this man's career is convincing the general public that he was a man of the people, right? His interests, his material interests, are completely different from every single working class person in this country, right? There is nothing that he, like, if you're watching this and you're a big Nigel Farage, Nigel Farage stan, right? You love him and you love what he does. This man, and you're working class, you work a salary job, right? For you earn like, I don't know, like 30k a year or something. This man is your enemy. He does not want what you want. He is an ex-investment banker, right? He specifically was given money by other very, very rich people to make Brexit happen so that, they could essentially lobby the Conservative Party to remove people's working rights. Remember the working time directive that was threatened in the post-EU world? That's something that they want that doesn't benefit you. Like, you may think, right, that you agree on him on a lot of social issues, right? Maybe, say, immigration or, cultural issues about, maybe you've bought into this kind of cultural Marxism myth or whatever. How much do these issues affect your day-to-day life in comparison to the way in which you being able to have X amount of holiday pay, or the actual amount you get paid at the end of every year, or, the amount of time that you have to work, the employer makes you work, because again, you can limit that because of the working time directive, right? How much out of those two things, which impacts your life more? If after all this, you still think that, the nasty brown people coming over and taking our jobs whilst also simultaneously being on benefits, how does that work? Then I don't know how to reach you. Because at the end of the day, this guy's material conditions are completely diametrically opposed to every single member of the working class, right? And I mean, let's be clear. Immigration benefits the whole country, and that's that's economically proven. I'm not going to get into a debate about that because that could take forever. But this man has sold you on the idea that just because he stands there with a cigarette and he stands there with a beer in the pub means that he's like you. You have been lied to, and this is the grift of this man's career. This is the legacy of this man's career, is his ability to convince people. Because he's a great orator. He's a great orator. Like if anyone is like the opposite to Keir Starmer, it's this man, right? He knows exactly how to draw in a crowd, exactly what to say to rile people up. He also knows very well how to parrot conspiracy theories, which would not be seen as particularly politically correct in this day and age, especially not in a post-EHRC report world, because he's been using anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, not only cultural Marxism, which has been, a bedrock of the conspiracy theory world for quite a while now, but he's also said that there's a Jewish lobby, because the percentage of Jewish people is quite small, but in terms of influence, quite big in terms of money and influence. That's a very powerful lobby. I wonder what that could be alluding to, Nigel. It's not a legacy of consistently supporting fascists in Europe, such as Marine Le Pen or Geert Wilders or Action für Deutschland. Right, all these far-right, neo-fascist political parties that he support, or the fascist political actions of Donald Trump, right? This man is it's exactly rivers of blood, isn't it? Like, if you think that this man represents your interests when he's specifically saying these things to divert your interest away from the people who really should be the target of your ire, which is the people who employ you and have a vested interest in making your life worse. Because at the end of the day, what makes your life better, right? Having more, higher wages, more holidays, better workers' rights, having a more empowered public sector that gives us free public services, right? Better healthcare. These are all things that we as a population, as the working class population, we all benefit from. If you look at things that immigrants benefit from, they benefit from all of these things as well, right? We should be natural bedfellows. Yet these people, these investment bankers and these employers and all these kind of people who specifically want lower wages and less taxation on large businesses so that there's any decrease in public spending, and they want you to work you harder for longer hours with fewer holidays that they have to pay, and less sick pay, and less health coverage and all that kind of stuff and things like that. These Can you not see how the interests that you have are completely opposite to that of the people like Nigel Farage, but are very similar to that of immigrants, right? Now, there's obviously, people say, oh, coming over taking our jobs, right? First of all, like, how do you think, like, how many, like, the best way, whenever you get someone who says that, there's not enough jobs to be able to accommodate immigrants and things like that, the question I would always ask them is, how many jobs are there? And they go, I don't know how many jobs are there. And then you go, okay, right, so how would we decide how many jobs that there would be, or how do we find out what controls where all the jobs come from? And they go, oh well, by having by having companies that, specifically in a capitalist system, right? We have companies that employ people. Okay, why would a company employ someone? Because they want to sell more products and they do these things. Okay, why would a company hire more people if they have more customers? Okay, right, sure, if they have more customers, they need to do more work, they need to hire more people. Okay, so what happens if the entire customer base of the whole country increases? If there are more consumers, what happens? Okay, there needs to be more jobs. Who's going to take those jobs? Immigrants. Simple. So that one question, when they say that immigrants are taking people's jobs, you just ask them how many jobs are there, and the only possible end of that conversation is them coming down on the side that maybe immigration is fine, right? Or to disavow them from this idea that immigrants steal people's jobs. Because at the end of the, there's not an unreasonable idea that they pose some kind of strain on like public services, specifically like health service and things like that. But considering that immigration not only benefits working people because the consumer base increases, but it also benefits business owners as well, in that they generate more wealth when there is a bigger immigrant population. It gives us more reason to tax them higher. If they're making more profits because of immigration, we can then tax them, and then not only take those tax benefits and then put them back into the public sphere to make the lives of every working person, immigrant or native born, make them all better through taxation. We can also do that to make the public services better that would also be strained by the excess population, right? This is economies of scale. Do you think that just because China has billions of people in it, it means that suddenly their public services are more strained? No, they have more people, they have more taxable income, which means that they can, or I guess it's different in their kind of their society or whatever, but the same principle of economies of scale still apply in these cases, right? But I think it's easy. I think it's easy to move individual people over on these issues, right? Like, we have to, as I was mentioning in the last segment, we have to, as people on the left, try and turn people around from liberal idealisms towards historical materialism, and not even historical, but just materialist philosophy in general. We have to get people to think about their own material conditions rather than thinking about, ideals, as I mentioned before, like the idea that we should live in we should have racialized communities or whatever, in the fact that, there are a lot of working class white people who will say that they just don't like the idea of immigrants coming in because they just don't like brown people. They don't like the cultural change that's happening. They think gentrification is because of immigration when it's not. It's because of rich people. But even so, if we actually get people to think about their material conditions in these kind of ways, that's how we're going to be able to change people's minds, right? Because at the end of the day, people are beholden to ideas at this point because of liberal politics. Like, it's been obfuscated for so long, and people have completely ignored their own material interests in favour of these narratives, because that's what people build. That's what media exists to build, is narratives. And that's what Nigel Farage was really good at. His legacy was building a narrative, and he used that narrative not only to sell Brexit to people, but then also be able to use his influence. And remember in the 2019 election, Labour lost that election, not specifically because the Conservatives did better, but people turned away from Labour to the Brexit Party, right? People felt betrayed by the Labour Party on this issue. And it was just a really good narrative that Nigel Farage spun. He played spoiler. Like, the vast majority of these new Labour seats that we wouldn't have expected to turn to the Conservatives, these Labour seats were lost not because the Conservative portion of the vote increased, but because Labour people moved over to UKIP. The Brexit Party. We have to win these people back by appealing to their working class material interests and getting them to think about that, rather than them to think about the narrative that gets sold to them by the liberal media. Now, I do not doubt that we will be seeing plenty of Nigel Farage in the years to come. He will still be using his platform on Twitter, on new media, on social media, on alternative media or whatever, to be able to get his points across. And I think, because at the end of the day, this man is an agent provocateur. Not only is a grifter, because he's not a grifter. I think grifter is someone who espouses different political espouses different political positions to that which they actually hold, specifically for clout, right? Although it's definitely true, the Parliamentary Labour Party definitely had lost touch with the grassroots base, and regular Labour Party members were turned off by Corbyn. Like, let's not be real. Like, they were turned off by Corbyn partially due to the media narrative that was built around it, but partially through the fact that Corbyn wasn't a very good leader. He wasn't particularly enigmatic in a way that was never going to win over win over traditional Labour Party voters. He won over new voters, right? So I think 2017 was a really good success for Corbyn, and it brought over new voters to Labour. But at the time 2019 rolled around, his image had been so tarnished in a post Brexit kind of world, or post Brexit deal world anyway, that his time to bring people to Labour had finished, and we needed a different approach rather than trying the same approach twice. Because I think he'd done all the good he could do at that point. But anyway, I digress. Going back to Nigel Farage, I've been trying to talk about the whole segment, it just ended up talking about Corbyn and Labour. But yeah, because he played spoiler about that election. We'll still see him through new media, because this guy's, as mentioned, he's a national provocateur, not a grifter. I think he's very sincere in the political policies that he espouses. I think he's very sincere. I don't think he's sincere in the reasons why, which is specifically to benefit, the rich and his mates in the financial sectors and things like that, right? Because those are the people who pay his bills at the end of the day. Jeremy was pretty dope, British Bernie. Yeah, but Bernie Sanders was good at speaking to people, whereas Corbyn just wasn't. Like, his policies were fantastic, I'm not going to lie. I really loved his manifesto, but having good policies is one thing, as we all know, people don't actually engage with policies, they engage with narratives. That's what we have to change the discourse around, and it's going to be hard, but we need to work on it. With Nigel Farage, what was in this Guardian article? Let me just bring it out one sec. Because he's still going to be involved with Reform UK from a kind of like a philosophical statement, philosophical, like from a kind of financial statement, and he's going to be involved in some amount of party running, but he's not going to be the leader anymore, and he's not going to be involved in party politics. Like, he's not going to try and get elected, but he's still going to be part of the media kind of apparatus and things like that. So in the interview, he said this is two main focuses. It will be the influence of China in the UK, the woke agenda, literally the indoctrination of children from primary school all the way through university, with now a completely different interpretation of history. Like, it's clearly he's just in a post-Brexit world, now that all of this kind of stuff is kind of blown over and he doesn't really care anymore, he's just going to be able to do what generates the most clicks and allows him to be like a media figure that pays his bills, and appealing to this kind of this conservative anti-wokeness, anti-cancel culture war bollocks is the way all of these conservative talking heads generate their clicks nowadays. So I can't say I'm very surprised. There's nothing much else to do. Why are the common people unaware of the existence of Cambodian sewer pigeons? Why? Who gives a shit about Cambodian sewer pigeons? No one cares. Why would I care about Cambodian sewer pigeons? What a ridiculous comment. Anyway, so yeah, glad he's going. He can fuck off. But it's definitely not the last we'll see of Nigel. He'll definitely be around. as a talking head on the BBC or whatever for quite a while to come, which is frustrating to say the least. But you know, he did all the damage that he needed to do to get the thing that he wanted, which was like his single policy was Brexit. But now, obviously, he's going to be moving forward with, you know, his kind of media career rather than his political career. The big problem, as well, the thing is, the Reform UK Party is basically just dead in the water. Like, what were their points of view? Just like opposing lockdowns, and also like moving the NHS to an insurance-based system, which is literally no one's going to vote for. As soon as you try and stand up on a stage and say, "I want to get rid of the NHS," everyone's literally like, that's just like political suicide. So. Definitely should get a pet thread going. I'm absolutely about that. No, I live in rented accommodation. No pets for me. Like, luckily, I'm looking to actually have my own house and get out of the fucking cycle of landlordism. Having to rent. That's very frustrating to keep renting. So, actually, going to be able to get out of that soon and be able to actually have a house. Going hard with my brother on a deposit, which is nice. Hate landlords. Yes. Fuck. Eat all of the landlords. So tilting. Like, it's honestly, it's worth like spending all of that deposit money and getting not only to get out of the cycle of renting, but also just to be able to have pets, to be able to have like look at this room I live in. It's a fucking during lockdown I've referred to this room as my Magnolia prison, because I've literally like left this room to go to the toilet and to go to pick up food from Uber Eats, to go to the shops. That's it through like a year. I've not seen any of my partners in a literal fucking year. It is absolutely killing me. I'm just stuck in this little prison of my own making. So hopefully I'll be able to get my own place properly, and I'll be able to actually have a room that kitted out the way I want to, and also get a cat, which would be nice. Yeah, like 3 people, but they never leave their rooms. 2 of them are like real gamers. Like, I'm like a pseudo gamer, but they're like proper gamers. So I never really speak to them very much. And the person's Japanese, so I don't really speak to them that often. Yeah, it is. But, you know, that'll soon be ending. Fingers crossed. I mean, there will come a time where, we're still in the process of getting the survey done on the house that I'm hopefully getting into. But then once that survey's been done, there's also all conveyancing to do. So it might be like we may not even move into this house if the survey finds faults. But hopefully, fingers crossed, it all comes back okay, and I will actually be on the road to a mortgage by May, June time. It's a nice birthday present. My birthday in July would be a nice birthday present. Also, if you're enjoying the stream, I highly recommend dropping me a follow on Twitch or subscribing on YouTube, which would be very, very kindly if you did. I'm on Twitter as well at no_justice_mtg, which you go follow me there, where I shit post about trans shit. It should be nice for people to be able to engage with me through all my platforms. Speaking of Twitter, I saw something. Oh wait a minute. Is my camera working? Let me just double check. Come on, phone. Phone's being really slow right now. There we go. Right. Now I can actually do the segment properly. That's true. I mean, no one does care what I'm thinking. That's why I have 3 viewers. So, but don't call me out. It's unfair. Expect an invite to the housewarming. Absolutely, you definitely want to get. Well, we're having a housewarming party in a post-COVID world. There, ham yield. So yeah. Anyway, now my camera's back into the. Now my camera's back into the doing things that it should be actually properly doing and not just like freezing out at me. Going to the next segment. So yeah, speaking of Twitter, I saw something pretty hilarious, which was this. So what is super straight? This is a new sexuality that means you're only attracted to cisgender women or men. So essentially just saying that I know who all the trans people are. And also this is the I loving that they're using the Grindr colour scheme. It's a mixture of the Grindr colour scheme and the ANCAP flag here, which is weird that those two things seem to go together. Yet, now, what is this? What is this actually supposed to achieve? Now, first of all, it's just a transphobic backlash. Let's be real about what this is. This is just like trying to drive a wedge between trans people and everybody else, because straight people and cishet people, they just need some attention. They just need equal attention than the LGBTs. Like, we're getting too above our station and they need to be included at least somehow. Yeah, I mean, like, okay, so let's talk about relationships with trans people, right? I'm going to speak on with absolute authority as the elected representative of all of the transes, right? Let's be clear, because there's a lot of discourse that happens around this, and a lot of this is kind of toxic. But let's first of all be very clear that if you have a preference for your partner to have a specific set of genitalia, that's fine. I don't get it. I really don't get it. I don't know why people are so hung up on this particular issue, but it's fine. Like, that's a thing that you can have. Like, and I think there's some people online who'd say, "Oh, if you have a genital fetish, then you're transphobic for not including that." Like, that's that. First of all, I don't think that's true, and second of all, like, you sound ridiculous. Like, even if that was true, which I could get into a conversation. I don't believe that it's true, but I could have a conversation about that. Even if you believe that it's true, and it is true, that sounds terrible, right? You're gonna win anyone over by saying that, right? But to say that you are not attracted to trans people is not only specifically transphobic, right? It's also completely in denial of reality. For one very specific reason, is that how would you know, without finding out they have a different set of genitalia than you expected, or by, actually genotyping someone, how do you know that they're trans? Like, there are some indicators that you'll have, like, I'm fucking shoulders McGee over here, like, testosterone did a fucking number on my shoulders and my hairline. Like, let's be real, I don't pass at all. But there are plenty of trans people, especially trans men, who pass very well, because once you've got a big beard, like, it's very difficult for people to read you as being assigned female at birth, right? Like, especially in a post, once you've, I mean, this is specifically with regards to, binary trans people, or, close to binary trans people who take hormonal procedures with which to transition, right? These people, a lot of these, you can't tell. They pass very well. And these people, these super straight people here, they're making the elective judgment, right? That they can tell who is and isn't trans, and that's going to be able to delineate to them who they can and can't find attractive. Which, it makes no sense. It has no actual, it doesn't actually have any actual practical use within the real world, considering that there are people who pass. These people, like, you've probably passed a load of different trans people in your life down the street or at the supermarket and not realised that they're trans, because, some people just pass very well. Because exactly, you don't when you sign, I have to decide whether you're attractive, so I'm going to genotype you now, and then you're going to find out whether I find you attractive from that genotype. That's not how attraction works, right? You look at someone, you think, it's like, does this give me the hornies? Do I need bonking? That's it. That's literally it. That's how attraction works. For like people outside the A spectrum, right? If you're in the A spectrum, then you don't do sexual attraction, maybe do romantic attraction, which may be more of a personal thing. But with regard to, you know, general sexual attraction for people who experience it, the vast majority of it is just this person, this form of this person is something that I find attractive by looking at it and finding it out. So there are other factors that are playing to whether you find a specific person attractive based on, you know, their own personal characteristics. But when you look at someone, you can understand, you can show someone a picture regardless of, you know, their sexuality, unless their race. You can show the picture of someone. Do you find this person attractive? And they will say yes or no. And that picture of someone does not include the fucking chromosomes, right? You do not know, unless you have some fucking like transo vision, whether this person is trans or not. Well, I mean, that you say that comes down to the crux of this issue. Now, is this transphobia? Yes, it is. It's specifically out there with which to antagonize trans people. Is it homophobia? Also, yes. So the reason why men are so frustrated by, like, cis straight men are frustrated by this discourse is that they feel like any attraction that they theoretically could have to trans women, even though they've probably experienced it quite a lot without knowing, they think that makes them gay. Now, if you watch the R-Traps gay video by ContraPoints, the Queen Contra, who clearly takes this issue and shows people like how attraction works. Like, in general, you're not really attracted to a gender either. Like, I'm going to do on my next stream, I'm going to do like a transgender 101 where I talk about a lot of trans concepts that people find confusing in a way, because I think a lot of people ask me for, or a lot of people ask within, you know, progressive spaces, is there any resource that I can use to be able to understand the trans experience? And I want to try and delineate a lot of difficult concepts for people so they understand them, so they can use those points to be able to explain to other people who don't understand about the trans experience, to be able to bring people over to our side, right? Now, you're not really attracted to gender. You're attracted to like specific features, and femininity and masculinity aren't gendered. They're gendered expressions, but they are not gender. And I feel like that's mostly what attracts people. I mean, there's a certain amount of physicality that is kind of sex-based in nature that you can be attracted to, but then that can be changed by people like wearing certain type of clothes or certain type of makeup. That can change the way people perceive these kind of gendered, or even like sex-based attributes of your physical form can be changed through the way in which you express your gender, right? And people will perceive you in a different way. And some people who wouldn't find you attractive before now do find you attractive, and that some way is what makeup exists to be able to do, in that you change your appearance to make yourself look nicer, whether it be for kind of aesthetic reasons or for sexual reasons or whatever, right? So you can change these things based on people's perception of you, and that's kind of how attraction works. You don't just say this person is a woman, so I can be attracted to them. You just look at them and you find them attractive, right? This thought process doesn't come into at the start, which is why this kind of bollocks is complete nonsense, because you can't tell, right? Now, we are part of. I mean, it got kind of ratioed. There's 9,000 quote tweets and 5,000 likes. When you say we are part of LGBTQ now, it is so cringe, right? This leads me, I was wondering, well, I wonder where this came from. Super straight? SS? This screams of poll to me. Wouldn't you know it? There it is. Making this thread before one of them hits the bump limit. Drive a wedge between expletive and other expletives. Red pill Zoomers essentially use the left tactics against them. So the reason why they're saying we are part of LGBTQ now is because they're using progressive rhetoric that is essentially now part of the Zoomer lexicon, right? They are now, I probably shouldn't show this for too long, so like progressive language that we speak on is now just like it's all just completely absorbed in the Zoomer lexicon, right? That's how they speak. They speak in terms of kind of materialist analysis of disadvantaged groups, so things like LGBT rights, they're all pretty up on this. I mean, obviously they're not marginalised. It's nonsense. But the reason why they're saying that they're part of the LGBTQ is to use Zoomer rhetoric that's part of the lexicon that they have been brought up into. This kind of, I hate to say social justice because that has very negative connotations, but it's part of the the discourse that they engage in, right? So that's why they're trying to say, "Oh, we're LGBTQ now," to try and people to use that rhetoric against them. See, look, use the left's tactic against themselves. Call them bigots for not accepting super straight. If they use this rhetoric and say, "Well, I'm just not attracted to trans women, and you're oppressing me for doing so," whatever. That's why they're doing this, because they're going to be able to move this rhetoric through the people who are already part of this kind of social movement, right? So it's very, very clear the tactics they are using with which to push this narrative to try and, as I said, drive a wedge between trans people and other LGBTQ groups. This is exactly what TERFs do. This is what gender critical people do. That's why LGB Alliance is the thing that exists, which, to be clear, is funded by white supremacists and has no actual LGBT people as part of it, as part of the actual movement itself, right? Because the vast majority of people who support these are all fucking straight people. All straight people who support this kind of LGB Alliance type stuff. I mean, even to the point at which, let me find my response to Candace Owens. Yeah, see, here's Candace Owens saying, "I've always thought the LGB should be demand a breakup from the T because gender dysphoria has nothing to do with sexual preference," right? All of these straight people are specifically trying to drive a wedge between trans people and LGB people, not just because they want to try and use it for political point scoring, and try and because trans people are the issue of the day that that are riling up people in the culture war, right? But second of all, they want to specifically not have progressive have a united front on these kind of issues, and these kind of wedge driving keeps people caught up in these semantic fights, right? But it's very, very scary kind of tactics that they use to try and specifically marginalize trans people, because at the end of the day, the vast majority of the public in both the US and the UK and the Western world have accepted LGBT people now. Then the only apart from the kind of LGBTQ kind of groups and things like that, trans people are the people who are still the most maligned. And if you try and gain yourself allies from the right culturally trying to gain themselves allies of LGBT people now they've been culturally accepted against trans acceptance, is going to make it harder to accept trans people, right? So they're not what they're not saying is that LGB should separate from T, and these should be two separate groups that advocate for their political rights, right? They're not saying that they should just separate and be two separate entities. They're specifically saying LGBT people should join us against trans people. That's what they're actually saying in these particular instances, and that's why in the super straight thing they're saying we are part of LGBTQ now, because they're using that to drive a wedge, right? How come these people are with lying to prove that they are right? I mean, that's the conservative existence, right? Just peddling lies and then trying to get away with it. Or ignoring evidence that contradicts your worldview. I'll bring this great comment here. I mean, it's both the Pornhub colours, the Grindr colours, and the ANCAP flag. So, I mean, it's very, very straight of them to choose the Grindr colour scheme, I must say. But this is, again, this seems very, very dangerous. As you saw on here, Kiwi farms have picked this up as well. And, essentially they're using it. Zoomer TikTok makes new sexuality called super straight, meaning no one's attracted to biological sex, meaning no trans people, countering the logic that the trans people are, really their gender, right? Exactly. It's like all of these online political movements, it's it's a poll site up, right? It always is. So it's very, very insidious and very, very dangerous, and we should be really, really wary about it. Obviously, this is just going to be some kind of fad that dies down. It's clearly being mocked pretty heavily across all of social media. Clearly being very heavily mocked. But this rhetoric that specifically exists to divide trans people away from the rest of the queer community, that's going to continue happening, and we need to continue holding united fronts against it. like a united front against it to be able to dispel these things. Otherwise, trans people are going to lose allies. Although, thankfully, for existing in kind of leftist and queer political spaces online, that doesn't really actually seem to be happening. Mostly seems to be like less. There are like older members of the non-trans queer community who are pretty transphobic and part of the GC movement, but the vast majority of both the GC movement, like TERFs, and the right movement, also straight people. It's all straight people feigning some level of like queer allyship to specifically attack trans people, right? Saying, well, I can't be a traditionalist queerphobe because I'm standing for lesbian, gay, and bisexual rights against trans people, not just because I'm following some like conservative sense of anti-trans sentiment, or just be the vast majority of transphobia, which is that you just find trans people a bit icky, which is literally half of the time. That's like half of what like pervades these issues, because it's not based in reality. They don't have any statistics to back up there. They will find like some random hack science from Lisa Littman or whatever that doesn't, with no academic credibility, rather than actually look at longitudinal studies or meta-analyses of the trans existence from a scientific perspective, which clearly shows, if you actually look at it properly, that trans people's gender dysphoria is best treated with transitioning, etc., etc., etc. I mean, but as long as they say that they are fighting for LGBT people, like that's the narrative that they're going to go with, right? They're not saying we hate trans people because we want to expunge them from political and social existence, even though that's what they're trying to do. What they're using is that rhetoric to be able to obfuscate that issue, right? They're saying, oh, I can't be a conservative traditionalist because I'm allying with LGBT people against trans people. Do you see what I mean? Do you see what? That's why they're trying to push this specific narrative to be able to, make. Right. So, for example, J.K. Rowling as a person. Whenever I bring her up and say how dangerous she is, someone goes, "Well, she's just a writer. Like, she's entitled to her opinion, and even if it's wrong, then like other ideas will still beat it in the marketplace of ideas." But she has such a massive reach, and the amount of people I've seen who've said, well, I had no idea about what was going on with trans people until J.K. Rowling talked about it, right? And then because she was on this opinion saying this is it's a danger to women's rights and also to lesbian and gay rights, suddenly people were actually interested in what she had to say. Whereas if it was just some random conservative person being reactionary, they wouldn't have engaged with it. But now they've gone from this specific angle, people then start engaging with it. Oh, the trans people are dangerous for gay and lesbian people, despite the fact that the vast majority of the lesbian communities have unconditional support for the trans existence, right? So anyway, the super straight thing, obviously, kind of dull, kind of stupid, but hey ho, Pol and Kiwi Farms doing what they do best, which is harass queer people on the internet for no reason. And to be fair, I think that most people are mocking the super straight thing, quite rightly so, for being as ridiculous as it is. But I think it's a really good case study on the way in which that people use this kind of rhetoric to attack trans people in specific. Yeah, it's true. I mean, all the actors did come out against what she was saying, which is fine. And like the vast majority of kind of TERF people are all going to die out eventually, as as the world moves on. But hey ho, it is what it is. How's everyone doing anyway? What's everyone been up to this weekend? I have been doing literal nothing. Been watching Jeff Hoagland's play Magic the Gathering. Basically, it's all I've been doing. I wonder how Jeff's doing in his tournament today. Oh, excellent. Nice to see you've been starting streaming as well. What's Poe? Do you want us to drop your stream links in the chat, Dominion Spy? Oh, Path of Exile, fair enough, no worries. The only games I play, Magic the Gathering, Rayner, and Pathologic 2. Like, I'm such like a casual when it comes to gaming. I just love Magic the Gathering, and Pathologic 2 is the best game ever. You should play it, definitely. Yeah, like I should do more Magic streams. Cheers for the link. I will go drop you a follow. The difficulty with streaming is trying to stream at a time when the V-Man isn't streaming, which why I'm doing kind of this early. I mean, have you played through Pathologic 2 yourself already? I would play through it first. I would play through it yourself first, because my playthrough, I don't go into a lot of kind of the lore aspects of it, and because my particular playthrough is so very specifically like min-maxing everything to try and beat the game at its own game, I wouldn't. It's not going to be like a great first impression that you get of the game, because what you really want to do is experience someone playing it for the first time, because part of the reason why the game is so good is that it deliberately changes your perception of game mechanics, because it does things differently to so many other games. You have these preconceptions of what games should and shouldn't do, right? And it completely uproots them from you to try and make it so that you make incorrect assumptions. And then when it uproots that, you have to think about it a whole different way, you have to approach it a whole different way. So I would highly recommend, if not playing Pathologic 2 for yourself first, even though I would highly recommend it, please do, because the game is incredible. But if not, find someone who's played it. Find a let's play of someone playing it through for the first time, and enjoy. And I would enjoy that rather than watching my playthrough. I would watch. I would recommend Layla Dyer and Keith Ballard. Actually, no, Layla Dyer is definitely the best. Hers is definitely the best playthrough, because Keith Ballard had already played through the first game, so he all three characters of the first game, so he already knew all the story, whereas Layla had only played through The Bachelor to start with. Obviously, Pathologic 2 was the Harrispecs, so she doesn't know anything about the Harrispecs character arc at all, so she's going into the game completely blind with no knowledge of like the new kind of mechanics, even though she's played the first game. So I'd highly recommend watching Layla Dyer's playthrough before watching my playthrough, because mine's specifically a playthrough about the game mechanics rather than the actual story, and engaging with these from a first perspective from playing the game. But being a bad gamer, I only think that really matters when you're playing like online multiplayer games, which I never play because I'm kind of a bad gamer as well. But I think Pathologic 2 is important enough that, because most of it is less about being good at gaming, and most of all is being good at strategizing and being good at thinking about mechanics and thinking about the way that you're playing. Like, there's some mechanical nous that comes from like the fighting, but the fighting's difficult for everybody anyway because it's kind of janky. And it takes some getting used to, but I think that's the same for everybody. I think that was kind of the point, really. Like, you're a doctor, you're not a fighter, so making the fighting easy wouldn't have made any sense. So, I mean, if I could implore you for anything, it would be to actually go out and play Pathologic 2 for yourself, because it's a really good game to take from the start. Or, if you're impatient, then maybe Pathologic 2 isn't the game for you. But if not, if you don't want to play it, watch Layla Dyer's playthrough. As Layla spelled Laila, and then Dyer spelled Dyer. Her playthrough is really, really good. And then once you've done that and you've seen her get it wrong all the time, you can then go back and watch my playthrough where I do it really, really well, because I'm really, really good at this game. I am the world's best Pathologic 2 player. It is true. I am under no illusions that I am not the best player of Pathology 2 in the world. Like, if there's someone better than me, then I challenge them to beat my playthrough. Like, I guess the way you could beat my play, like, I didn't go through the abattoir in my playthrough, so if someone can do my playthrough on my difficulty and go through the abattoir with no deaths for any of the characters or the Harrispecs, then I will cede my throne. But until that happens, I am the best Pathology 2 player in the world. Anyway, I think there's not much else for me to talk about, really. I've kind of done most of the topics I wanted to cover. I've done Angela Rayner, I've done nurses, I've done Nigel Farage and super straight stuff. Yeah, I think I've kind of done all covered all the topics that I wanted to cover. I guess the V-Man is coming online in a couple of hours' time, so I've got some time to go and chill out, have some food. Pasta. That's all I've got. Actually, that's a lie. No, I have last night's chicken nuggets to be able to reheat, which is definitely going to be a wholesome meal. No, I'm not a vegan, sorry. Yeah, this stream isn't sponsored by McDonald's, but if you want to get in contact, it certainly could be. Got barbecue sauce for them as well. Apparently, like, I was watching a video, apparently, like, American McDonald's is, like, way different to UK McDonald's. Like, literally, like, so the fries in the UK is literally just potato, salt and fat, right? But in America, there's like 1,000 different extra pieces of shit they add into the fries, and it makes no sense to me. Let me find. I think it was a BuzzFeed. I mean, I can definitely enjoy having cold nuggets for breakfast. Let me find this video. That's from Food Insider. Let me have a look at this and turn up the speed.
From calorie count to portion sizes, we wanted to find out the biggest differences between UK and US McDonald's. This is what a small drink looks like in the UK.
This is a US small.
This is what a medium drink looks like.
This is a US medium.
And this is a large.
And this is a US
True, yeah, that's regulation, that's true. Because we don't have, obviously, in the Coca-Cola we have like high fructose corn syrup.
The default adult sizes on the menu are a box of 6, a box of 9, or a share box of 20.
Nuggets. You can get a box of 4, or you can get a 6-piece, or 10, 20 for sharing, or 40. And according to the 3 McDonald's in the area, they don't have 20 or 40 boxes, they just do them in increments of 10. But this is on the menu.
In the UK, we've got 3 sizes of fries. These are our small fries in the paper bag.
Here is the small fry.
These are our medium fries in the iconic carton.
Here is the medium fry.
And then these are our large fries.
And here is the large fry.
So we couldn't find an exact weight measurement for the fries online, so what we're going to do is weigh them ourselves.
Oh, the portion sizes are wild in the US as well. I remember getting like a pizza the size of a bus wheel.
I'm not sure there will be, but let's find out.
Hang on.
So while McDonald's fries might look and taste pretty similar in the UK and the US, in the UK we only have 3 ingredients, which is oil, salt, and potatoes.
The McDonald's French fries in America have way more ingredients. These fries are made from potatoes, obviously, vegetable oil, which is canola oil, corn oil, soybean oil, hydrogenated, ha! Thank you. Hydrogenated soybean oil, natural, beef, flavor, dextrose, sodium, acid, phosphate,
What is this?
pyrophosphate, sodium, acid, pyrophosphate, which is used to maintain the color. Are they that much of a different color than the ones in the UK? Is it worth it? Can we get a side-by-side comparison? Are they that much more bright yellow? We need to put sodium, acid, pyrophosphate, or whatever it's called in it. Salt, and I should mention that a natural beef flavor can...
Why would anyone care about the yellow color of the fries? What's the point? Why would anyone care about how the fries being more yellow? That's ridiculous.
Hydrolyzed wheat and hydrolyzed milk as a starting ingredient, and of course I have no idea what that means.
So the biggest calorie difference in a Big Mac actually comes from the sauce. In the US, they've got about 40 more calories than we do in the UK. We're not sure if this is because there's more sauce or because of the ingredients list. In the UK, it's just a little bit more simple.
Our sauce is made of soybean oil, sweet relish, which is made of diced pickles, sugar, high fructose corn syrup, distilled vinegar, salt, corn syrup, all right, 2 types of corn syrup, xanthan gum, calcium chloride, spice extractives, water, I've heard of that, egg yolks, distilled vinegar, spices, onion powder, salt, propylene glycol alginate, garlic powder, vegetable protein, which has hydrolyzed corn, soy, and wheat, sugar, caramel color, turmeric, extractives of paprika, and of course, soy lecithin. I don't know which one it is.
So if you are trying to eat healthily at McDonald's, it might actually...
Look at all that soy. Imagine being like the burly high tea Chad that you are, going into McDonald's expecting a Big Mac full of meaty protein to be able to appease the needs of your highly, your muscles that grow so thick and bulging to be able to be a proper fucking high tea Chad, and then you find out that you have been unknowingly fed feminizing soy phytoestrogens by your Big Mac meal. Imagine finding that out. How tragic. How absolutely tragic. You're being force feminized by the McDonald's.
Maybe the drinks that you have to look out for.
That's nothing, guys. Our chocolate shake, 840 calories. That's as many calories as 2 cheeseburgers and 1 hamburger.
So what does that all mean? If you were to walk into a UK McDonald's and order yourself a large Big Mac meal with a milkshake, it would be around 1,400 calories.
And if you were to get the large Big Mac meal with the chocolate shake in America, the total here is 1,870 calories. So
that's my whole fucking calorie. That's my actual calorie count for the whole fucking day. That's wild. No wonder you people have an obesity problem. It's almost like you have politicians who are beholden to large companies to not make them have proper rules about what they can and can't put into their food. Funny that, but I guess that's just red tape.
That's 1,870 calories. The daily calorie allowance for an American dude is 2,500. Okay, so you have 630 left. 1 McNugget is 55 calories, right? So you could also have 11 more nuggets, and there you go. That's all you need for the day.
Here's everything you can only get at a UK McDonald's. So here we've got the Veggie Deluxe Burger, which is a veggie burger that's served with some mayo and some lettuce. Here we've got a Chicken Legend, which is a chicken burger, again, served with mayo and lettuce.
Chicken Legend, I don't even know what that is. Not gonna catch on. That can stay in the UK.
We have a range of wraps that you can get in the UK. We have a wrap of the day. Here we've got the Fajita Crisp, which is some...
McDonald's wrap are the fucking bomb. I cannot believe we don't have them in the UK, in the US. The McDonald's wraps are the sickness. I love them.
Chicken, along with some veg and some spicy fajita sauce. Here we've got some veggie dippers. These were actually introduced as part of Veganuary in 2020 in the UK, but they've stuck on the menu. So these are Vegan Society approved, and they're sort of like a fried bean patty sort of thing.
Like, pick a more unappetizing thing to get at McDonald's. Veggie dippers.
And then finally we've got some mozzarella dippers, which are just kind of mozzarella sticks really.
Well, sucks to be in the UK, because everything you see right here is USA only, baby. Haha! USA only! So I'm going to talk about the coffee drinks real fast. Here in the US, we have all the same coffee drinks they do in the UK, but every coffee drink has an iced version and also a caramel and or French vanilla and or mocha version, depending on...
Do you know McDonald's is the most popular coffee in the United States? It's wild. I mean, we probably don't have as many coffees on the UK McDonald's menu because we probably don't have as many coffee, because if you're gonna go get coffee, if you're out, you're gonna go and get coffee in the UK, you'll just go to Costa. You'll just go to Cafe Nero. A Lucky Charms with Flurry. I think it is a Lucky Charms with Flurry, yeah.
Know what you're getting. So we in the US, of course, have more variety. Shamrock Shake. The Shamrock Shake is it's like vanilla and mint shake. Strawberry sundae. This has recently been discontinued.
That Shamrock Shake looks bomb as fuck.
In the UK. Sorry, guys. Still got it in the US. My favorite as a kid. Caramel sundae. Fruit and yogurt parfait. Maybe it's healthy, I have no idea, probably not. Those were the cold items I wanted to get out of the way as they slowly melt under these lights. Got a lot more to go through. Harry, bear with me here, buddy. Buttermilk, crispy chicken sandwich. Yo, I think this was introduced when the chicken sandwich wars were really heating up when Chick-fil-A started taking over. Let's see what's under the hood. Look at that.
I love McFlurry so much.
Quarter pounder with cheese, deluxe. This is your fancy quarter pounder with cheese. This is for a Sunday dinner. When you have company over. There's so much. Sausage breakfast burrito. Even after, for a while, it's still glowing yellow.
That looks utterly revolting. My fucking god. I am now vegan after seeing that.
Now, these are the buttermilk crispy chicken tenders. These smell amazing. Oh, I'm biting these so bad.
I mean, those are just chicken select. There's not that much different.
Just take a big bite. I want to talk about sauces real quick. Okay, I'm at McDonald's and I go, give me one of everything. I've heard from Harry and the team over at the UK that some of these I don't have, including sweet and sour, honey mustard. What else don't you guys have? I don't think you guys have ranch either, or buffalo. I gotta say though, the sauces are everything.
So what the fuck is up with US people and their obsession with ranch? Ranch is fine.
A couple of sauces that are kind of unique to the UK as well. We've got a sweet curry dipping sauce, and then we've also got a salsa dip as well, which I didn't know existed until today.
Oh yes, donut sticks. These donut sticks also come with a chocolate dipping sauce. Another thing I'm certain they
this donut sticks look so good.
In the UK. Yo, breakfast is served. Look at this. Oh yeah, who's ready to start the day? It's McGriddle talk.
Also, griddle is not a fucking word. The term is grill. No, sorry, no. Griddle is like, no, it's like pan-seared, right? It's griddle, whereas like they would Americans call grilling broiling for some reason. I have no idea.
So for those of you in the UK who don't know what a McGriddle is, the United States, McDonald's had this genius idea. What if we took breakfast sandwiches, replaced the buns, and made them pancakes? And somehow injected some sort of syrup flavor into the pancakes. And the McGriddle was born, and I have to say, they're fantastic. This one right here, the bacon, egg, and cheese.
I mean, sounds like a quadruple bypass in greaseproof paper, but I'm down with that.
McGriddle. This is the sausage. Yeah. This is the sausage, egg, and cheese McGriddle. American food engineering at its finest.
See, I'm sorry about that. Sorry to make you all
In
hungry.
the UK, you guys call biscuits cookies. Here, no. So in the UK, biscuits are cookies, what we call cookies. In the US, biscuits are what we call, I don't know what else you can call them. Like
Scones. That's what we call scones.
you bake them and they're
Yeah,
from the
no,
south,
I'm
and
not
they're dry,
surprised
and I don't know
Minions
what they
by.
are. Much like the McGriddles, we have a version of every breakfast sandwich that instead of the regular bun bread, it's biscuits. Not the cookie biscuits like you guys have. These biscuits.
Joe, you were so close on the whole cookie biscuit thing. What you guys call biscuits, we would actually kind of call scones, or scones, depending on where you're from. And the thought of putting breakfast food in between them is kind of weird. They're usually reserved for cream and jam for an afternoon tea.
Last, and in my opinion, least, is this thing, the Southwest grilled chicken salad.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Oh.
Quite yellow for some reason.
But can I eat now? Yeah. I don't care how many calories, it's just really good.
Well, that was a fun little end to the stream, wasn't it? Well, thanks for sticking around, guys. And there's only a couple of you who are left over, but I will catch you on the next one. I'll probably do one tomorrow after. Probably do some magic streams this week. Like, there's never that much to be able to talk about politics-wise, and I get kind of burnt out pretty easily. But I have this whole week off work until next Saturday, so I'll at least try. I can try and stream at least more than just this once, because I didn't stream. I've not streamed for a whole week. No, not Citadel. I'm streaming 4-color Runestorm. It's like a runes combo deck. It's great. I'll catch you all on the next one, and thanks for sticking around, everyone. See you later.